Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? Today we are going to start our unit for communication, which is one of the easiest unit in UGC Net paper 1. And you have the right amount of information, you will definitely bag all those 5 questions. Right. So diving into the communication section of the NTA UGC Net paper 1 is like exploring a treasure trove. Imagine there are about 4 to 5 questions waiting for you in the exam, right? All from this single section, right? And this section is very easy, right? And guess what? If you get a good grip on what communication is all about, you're looking at sweeping all those marks right into your pocket, right? And this part of the syllabus is a journey through the world of communication, touching on every single thing from what it means to how we do it, and even, the bumps we hit along the way, like barriers in communication, right? So let's break it down right at its core. Communication is all about swapping ideas and meaning, whether you're doing it with one person or a bunch, right? We humans have gotten pretty creative with over the years, right? Using everything from facial expression and hand gestures to writing long essays or making sounds and noises. Think about it, the way you explain a game's rule to your friends or share a secret with your besties. That's all communication, right? And when it comes to teaching, incorporating communication isn't just a nice to have, right? It's essential these days. It's what makes learning stick because it connects new information to what students already know and experience every day, right? It's like when a teacher uses your favorite TV show to explain a concept, suddenly it all makes sense, right? So let's not waste any more time and let's dive into the meaning of communication. Now, where does this term communication come from? Right? It's very important that you should know. It's like a trip back in time. The word itself has roots in communicare or communis, right? Which is a kind of fancy Latin ways of saying to share, to make common, or to participate. Right? At its heart, communication is about sharing, tossing ideas back and forth, spreading knowledge, or even sharing a bit of gossip, right? It's a two-way street. Someone sends a message and someone else receives it, whether it's through speaking, writing, listening, or reading, or through expression, right? To paint a picture, imagine you're trying to explain to your friend how to make the world's best grilled cheese sandwich over text. So suppose you're the sender, pouring your sacred grilled cheese knowledge into a message. Your friend, eagerly waiting on the other side of the screen, right, is the receiver, soaking up every cheesy details that you have shared. So the art of communication is making sure your friend gets the gist of your grilled cheese wisdom, right? That means listening to their questions, clarifying stuff they don't get, and maybe even respecting their opinion that adding pickles isn't a crime against cuisine, right? So by breaking it down this way, we are taking the high and mighty concept of communication and seeing it for what it really is, right? It is a part of our everyday life, right? It's in the advice we give, the stories we share, and yes, even in the way we argue about the best pizza topping, right? Effective communication is about tuning in, speaking up, and sometimes agreeing to disagree, right? It's about making sure that at the end of the day we are all a little bit more connected. Right. Now let me tell you about the definition of communication. There is a little bit mistake in the heading. It is still meaning, but it's definition here, right? So keep in mind, communication comes from the Latin word communicare, right? Which basically means what? To share stuff or to be sync with others. It's like the magic bridge that helps us cross over the vast canyon that separate our own little worlds from everyone else's, right? Blending the private with the public and connecting what's buzzing inside our heads with everything outside. So imagine communication as a two-way street where messages, whether they're packed with words or just silent gestures, when communication hits the mark, it's like hitting a bull's eye in dark. You get exactly the reaction or understanding you were aiming for. Think about those times when you have explained something tricky and you see that light bulb moment in the other person's eyes, right? That's communication working its magic. And there is this guy, Keith Davis. He puts it simply, passing along information and getting on the same page with someone else is what communication is all about. It's like when you're trying to explain to your friend how to beat the tough level in a video game and they get it because of how you laid it out for them, right? So it's effective communication. Then another guy is saying, John Adair says, like, communication is all about connecting with someone else and being understood. Picture yourself at a coffee house, right, and trying to order that complicated drink with the extra shot and no foam, right? When the barista nods and repeats your order back to you, what is that? That's effective communication. He got it what you are trying to say, right? Then Peter Little, dives into the idea that communication is about sending information so that both individuals and groups catch the drift and respond accordingly, right? It's like when you send out a group message about where to meet up and everyone shows up at the right place and time, right? So that's communication. So William Newman and Charles Summer talk about exchanging ideas, facts, opinions, or emotions with at least one other person. Imagine you're debating the best superhero movies with your friends. Everyone throwing in two kind of different ideas, right? Sharing different viewpoints and feelings, creating a rich kind of tapestry of conversation. And Lewis Allen describes communication as a bridge of meaning, right, emphasizing the ongoing process of speaking, listening, and understanding. Think about those long heart to heart with a friend where you talk out a problem, listen intently, right, and come away with feeling like you have really been heard and understood, right? That's the bridge of communication doing its job, connecting two minds and hearts across whatever gap was right there before. So, in essence, communication isn't just about throwing words or gestures into a void and hoping for the best. It's an art form, right? A skill that lets us reach out, connect, and truly understand each other. Whether it's a nod or a text or a deep conversation, right? Or a shared laugh over lean joke, right? It's all about making those connections that light up our social worlds. So that's why effective communication is quite important, right? So guys, that was the definition of communication from different people. Now let me tell you about the cultural and semiotic aspects of communication. What are these? Because in exam they asked one question based on that. That's why we have put it here. So you should know all the basics and fundamentals of communication, like what is semiotics, what is signs, symbols, and along with that pragmatic, semantic, syntactic. You might have some ideas about that, but we'll explain a little bit more so we can understand what they really mean and why they are important in communication. So, this fascinating world of how we communicate across different cultures and the signs and symbols that make our conversation interesting and tick, right? It's all about understanding each other, whether we are from the same neighborhood or opposite side of the globe, right? And how we use all sorts of cues, both spoken and unspoken, to get our points across. Imagine chatting with someone from a completely different background. You might notice they have their own way of saying things, right? Using gesture or even how they stand when they talk to you. So the mix of verbal and non-verbal cues is the essence of cross-cultural or intercultural communication. It's not just about the words we use, but how our culture shape the way we express joy, sorrow, or agreement, or sometimes disagreement without even saying a word, right? For instance, think about how parents teach their kids manner, saying please and thank you, or how to be respectful, right? This isn't just about being polite, it's a way of passing down cultural values and ways of communicating that have been around for generations. Now let's dive into the next, which is our semiotic aspects of communication, right? Where we'll talk about semiotic, signs, symbols, pragmatic, semantic, and syntactic, right? So let me tell you the first thing, semiotic. What is this? Do you have any idea what it is? If you know, you can just write in the comment box. Semiotic is essentially the cool study of signs. Remember that, signs and symbols. That's your keyword. If you know that, then your semiotic is done, right? And how they get their meaning across to us. Right. It's like when you're trying to figure out what your friend is saying without them actually speaking. They might roll their eyes and you instantly know they're not too thrilled about what's happening. So that's a sign. And you being the interpreter, just decoded its meaning. Now, this fancy term, semiosis, is just a fancy way of saying any action or process that involves using signs to communicate. Right? Think about it like using emojis when you text. Each emoji is a sign, and you're using them to add flavor to your message or to convey how you're feeling without typing it out, right? So when you text, you put a smiley that you're happy, right? So these are kind of signs, and that is also a kind of a study in semiotics. The study of semiotics dives into deep how we use these signs, whether they're pictures, gestures, or even words, to share our thoughts and shape how we see the world and ourselves. It's all about ensuring the signs we use hit the mark with the people we are trying to communicate with. For example, think about traffic lights. A green light is a universal sign that means go, right? And we all understand it without needing a manual. Or consider how a brand logo like the Apple with a bite, we instantly think it's an iPhone or a MacBook, right? So these are signs doing their jobs, conveying meanings and ideas in kind of split seconds. And semiotics helps us to understand the power of these signs and how they are crafted to make sure the message is clear. It's like being in on the secret message of symbols that surround us, right? From the icons on your phone or to the art that can make you feel something deep without needing a single word. So by paying attention to the signs around us and how they are used, we can get better at picking up what's being put down, whether it's in advertising, in our social interaction, or even in the movies we watch, where a single glance can tell the whole story, right? And next, let me tell you about the signs. So by the word you can understand, it's not complicated to understand, but again, it's a very deep subject that you should know. So signs are kind of everywhere. They're like little clues that tell us what's going on without using words, right? For example, when you see a dark clouds gathering, it's probably going to rain. Or if someone's tapping their foot impatiently, you can guess they are in a hurry or maybe a bit annoyed. Signs are kind of unsung heroes of communication, adding layers of meanings to our daily interaction. Then we have symbol. So symbols are the shorthand of communication. They are like the emojis of the real world, right? Conveying complex ideas with simple images or actions, right? Take the heart symbol, for example. It's not just a cute design, it represents what love, affection, and emotional connection. Or think about how simple thumbs up can mean okay, good job, or I agree, right? In many culture, different kind of symbols are there, right? So symbols kind of let us bridge the gap between different experiences and ideas, making it easier to share what's on our mind without a long kind of explanation. Now let me tell you about the three musketeers of communication, which is pragmatic, semantic, and syntactic. So when we communicate, right, it's not just a random mix of words and gestures, right? There's a method of this madness governed by three main rules. So pragmatic. In simple word, let me tell you, this is all about the relationship between the message and the person receiving it. It's like when your friend text you a picture of pizza when you're both trying to decide what to eat without saying a word. It's a pizza night, right? So next is semantic. So this looks at the meaning behind the signs and symbols we use. For example, a red rose isn't just a pretty flower. It's a universal symbol of love and romance, right? And then we have syntactic, which is all about syntax and structure, right? So this is the kind of nerdy side of the communication, focusing on the structure and format of how we present our messages, right? It's like the grammar of science, ensuring that the way we arrange our word or symbols makes sense to others. Right. So by understanding these aspects, we can get better at sending clear, effective messages, whether we are talking to someone from our own culture or from the other side of the world. So communication is what connects us. And by paying attention to the subtle cues and symbols, we can all become masters of this art. Right. This is not only important for your exam, but also important in your daily life, that how effective communication can change the world. Now let me tell you about the communication protocol, Very important that you should understand these protocol that I have mentioned here. Think of a communication protocol as the set of invisible rules that lets your gadgets and online service talk to each other, right? It's like the secret handshake or the inside joke language that you have with your friends, but for your computer, smartphone, and all the website and app you love, right? Now, these protocols are super important because they make sure that when you send a message, watch a video, or post a selfie, the data actually gets where it's supposed to go. Let's break down a few of these protocols with examples that'll make them stick. And also, these are the important. Sometime in exam they ask the full form of it, or sometime they ask about it, right? So first we have transmission control protocol. Everyone is aware of that, TCP, right? This one's like a reliable mail service for your data. Imagine you're sending a super important package, right? Say a birthday present for your best friend. So TCP makes sure that your package doesn't just get tossed into the void. It tracks the packages from your door to your friends, ensuring it arrives safely, right? If something goes wrong, TCP is on it, right? Arranging for a lost or damaged packages to be sent again. It's all about making sure your data gets to its destination safely and in the right order. Kind of like making sure every piece of your friend's puzzle gift arrives so they can put it together. So remember, it's a simple transfer control protocol which sends data where you are trying to send. So next we have user datagram protocol, UDP. Right. So now if TCP is the reliable mail service, UDP is like sending a postcard. It's quick, simple, and remember, there's no guarantee that the postcard will, reach its destination. But for many applications, speed is more important than certainty, right? Think of playing an online game or streaming live sports. If a few bits of data like frame of video or a sound go missing, it's not the end of the world, right? You probably won't even notice. Next we have internet control message protocol, in simple, ICMP. Quite important. So this one is a bit like the diagnostic tool of the internet. Imagine you're trying to figure out why your video call is glitchy. So ICMP is the utility that sends test messages to pinpoint the problem. It's the behind the scenes hero that helps network engineers and sometimes your computer to figure out what's wrong when there are network issues, right? Think of it as the internet's way of asking, like, why isn't this working, right? So, and then using the answers to troubleshoot the problem. So guys, get ready for the most important section of this particular session is models of communication, and certainly you're gonna get one question based on that. So in that perspective, you gotta pay a little bit more attention, right? So let's begin. What we are going to discuss, models of communication. It's like we're discussing the latest movie or cool tech gadget, right? These models aren't just academic jargon, guys. They are blueprint for understanding how we exchange information from one brain to another. So in models of communication, we're gonna discuss all these 10 models which are important, and they have been asking question based on that. So I have just shortlisted what are important because there are many models, right? But these 10 models of communication are quite important and they are famous, and of course in exam they ask question from all these 10, right? So remember this, that we'll start with Aristotle model of communication, then we'll talk about Shannon and Weaver. You must have come across one question based on that, right? Then Lascelles model of communication, then Verbalo's sender message channel receiver, simple SMCR, right? Then we'll talk about Schramm model of communication, then interaction model of communication, then we have more like Burnland's transactional model of communication, helical model of communication, and a couple of more like the constructionist model of communication, and at the end we're going to talk about transmission communication model. So these all models are quite important that you should pay attention, because in exam, who knows, they might ask question based on that, right? So let me tell you first, Aristotle model of communication. It's very easy, and in simple word, it has like 5 elements, right? Speaker, speech, occasion, audience, and effect. Let me tell you right about the Aristotle model of communication, which feels like Aristotle was onto something timeless, focusing on the art of persuasion. Imagine it's like crafting the perfect playlist for your friend's road trip. As I told you, it has 5 elements. speaker, speech, occasion, audience, and effect, right? So let's say you're trying to convince your friend to join you on a weekend gateway. So you are the speaker, right? Armed with your best pitches, that is your speech, then tailored for the perfect moment or the occasion to sway your buddy, right? And then that is your buddy is who? The audience, right? And your goal is what? To create that kind of, aha, let's do kind of moment. And that's the effect. Right, it's all about how you mix your ingredients. The right words at the right time can turn a maybe into a yes, right? Just like a well crafted message can inspire action, change a mind, or even win votes, right? Like in elections, right? Much like politician working the crowd to secure those, kind of victories. Let me give you another example. Okay, suppose in politics there is a politician who's our speaker, right? And he gives a grand message, which is a speech. Then why he's doing it? To get votes at the time of an election. That is an occasion, right? And whom he is seeking or she is seeking for? From the civilians, which is audience. So the civilians only vote when if they are influenced by what the politician says in his speech. So the content must be kind of awe-inspiring and influential. So that's the effect that should be there. Then the voter will give the vote, right? So these 5 elements you can understand with a politician or with a leader. So it'll be easy for you to understand, right? So that's easy, right? Aristotle model of communication. I hope you understand this particular stuff. Remember the 5 elements. Now let me tell you another, which is Shannon and Weaver's linear model of communication, right? It is not complicated because it has only 4 primary components. First, sender, then the message, then how you're sending your channel, and whom are you sending, that is your receiver, right? So Shannon and Weaver, remember that they introduced this cool concept way back in 1949. Remember, this date is very important. So these guys were the real deal at Bell Telephone Labs. Very important that you should remember that too, right? Working hard to make sure our phone chats and radio tunes, came through crystal clear. So they come up with this idea, kind of like the granddaddy of all kind of communication theory. So that is your first. Of course, it is Aristotle, the first one, but remember the ideal and the first one was in 1949 by Shannon and Weaver. So they talk about how we get messages from point A to point B. First up in this journey, we have the sender. That's you, basically you, right? Deciding you want to share something. Let's say you have just seen the most epic sunset and you need to tell your friend about it. So that urge to share, that spark is where it all begins. So that is the sender, right? Next, you have got the message itself, right? It's not just about saying the sky looked so cool, right? You write something beautifully, right? It's about painting a picture with your words, right? Maybe throwing it how it made you feel or how the colors reminded you of that one summer you spent at the lake, right? So these kind of things you just put effect, right? So this part is all about crafting what you want to say in way that captures the essence of that particular moment. So that is your message. Now before your message can start its journey, you have got to encode it, right? And this isn't just about secret codes or anything. It's about choosing how you're going to share your sunset story, right? Are you going to text it or snap a photo or maybe describe it over a call? So this step is all about turning your thoughts into a form that can travel to your friend, be it through sound waves or digital data or written words, right? Then we have like channels. Channels are quite important because it is the highway of your message travels on, right? It could be the internet if you're texting or emailing, or the air itself if you're talking face to face or over the phone. It's the medium that carries your encoded sunset story from you to your friend, right? So that's your channel. Then we have, but in between there is something that is noise. Sometimes it can jump in at any point, like a bad signal that turns your voice into a robot, right? Or misinterpreted text that makes your heartfelt description sound like a weather report. So noise is anything that distort your message, making it harder for your friend to get what you're trying to say. So once the message arrives, we hit the reception stage, right? This is when your friend's phone lights up with your text or their ears pick up the sound of your voice. So the message has landed, right? But still it's in the form you encoded it in. So next process is what? Decoding, right? This is when your friend translates your text or voice back into the ideas and images you sent out, right? So if you've done a good job in encoding and the noise didn't come, right, then they'll be seeing that sunset in their mind's eyes just as you did, right? So the final piece of the puzzle is interpretation. It's not about, it's not just about understanding the words, it's about getting the feeling, the awe, and the beauty you felt. It's about your friend feeling that same sense of wonder as the picture, the sunset you describe. Interpretation is where the message really lands, completing its journey, from your minds to there. So this whole process that you should understand. So guys, that was all about Shannon and Weaver's linear model of communication. Now let me tell you about Lasswell's model of communication. And Lasswell was this super smart guy hanging out at Yale University, where he spent a lot of time thinking about how we all communicate with each other. He came up with this idea that communication isn't just about chatting or sending text. According to him, it's got three big jobs to do it, right? So what are these jobs? First, it's like a personal radar, constantly scanning what's going on around us. Think of how you scroll through your social media feeds to catch up on the news or check the weather app to see if you need an umbrella. That's communication keeping you in the loop with your environment. Remember, the surveillance of the environment is the first thing. Then there is this bit about making sure all the different parts of society are on the same page, right? It's like when you see a campaign encouraging people to recycle, those messages help everyone understand the importance of working together to take care of the planet. So the second is the correlation of component of society, right? Then at the third job is what? Passing down culture and traditions from one generation to the next. Ever wonder why grandma insisted on teaching you how to make that special family recipe? That's a perfect example of cultural transmission, ensuring that the family, culinary tradition lives on through you. Right, so that is very important, the cultural transmission between generations. Right, so remember this Lasswell's model of communication. In exam, they have asked question based on that too. Now, Lasswell's model breaks down the act of communication into a simple yet powerful formula. Who says what, in which channel, to whom, and with what effect. Remember that. It's a neat way to think about any communication happening around us. Okay, let me give you another example. Suppose there is TEPC operator, which is like the WHO, right? And what he's sending radioactive material flowing into the sea, and how he's sending through channels, which is BBC News, right? And to whom he's sending to a public, and which what effect, giving warning to the people of Japan from the radiation. So that's the whole process that you should understand. So guys, that was all about Lasswell's model of communication. Now let me tell you another important, which is SMCR, Barlow's Sender Message Channel Receiver, in simple SMCR. So let me tell you about it. So David Barlow, he was a cool professor from Michigan State University, right? Took an old school communication model from 1949 and he gave it a little twist, right? And popped out something fresh in 1960. He called it the SMCR model, short for Sender Message Channel Receiver. So first off, we have the source or the sender. Imagine you're about to text a friend about grabbing a pizza. So that means you're the sender. The one who texts or the one who says is the sender, right? Then next we have the message. So this isn't just about pizza, right? It's a whole package. The word, the emoji, the gifs you might add for flavors or sometimes memes, right? It's how you say what you're saying. So your message is wrapped up in the way you put it together, like choosing a gif for a dancing pizza slice to really sell the mood, right? Then we have channel. Remember that this is about how you're getting your message across. Are you texting or calling, right? Or maybe using kind of, signal. If you're texting, you're relying on your thumbs motor skill to tap out the message, right? So the channel is all sensory based. It's all about hearing, seeing, feeling, also tasting and smelling. And finally, what we have, the receiver. This is your friend decoding your pizza message, right? They are using their ninja skills in reading, interpreting emojis, and also those memes that you have sent, and sensing your excitement through the digital vibes you're sending. So their reaction is based on their own set of skills, maybe their attitude. Are they even into pizza? Do they like it? Or knowledge? Do they know about place you're suggesting? And their own social and cultural background. Very important. So how does this play out in real life? Let's say you send that pizza text, that you're the sender, armed with your pizza passion or texting powers, that is your message, right? Your message is a mix of excitement, hunger cues, and maybe a dash of pizza meme magic. So the channel is what, your phone or your WhatsApp transmitting through the airwaves, right? And the receiver is what, whom you're sending, your buddy, right? Who sees your message and thinks, yeah, pizza sounds kind of epic, let's go and grab it, right? Or maybe they are on a diet and see your pizza gif as a test of willpower, right? So in the end, Berlo's model is about understanding that communication isn't just about talking or texting. It's about how our backgrounds, methods, and senses play into sending and receiving messages, right? It's about sending the whole pizza, not just the slice, right? So remember, what is in SMCR important? Sender, message, channel, and receiver. So that was all about Berlo's SMCR. Let me show you a picture so you will understand. So the source and sender is what? Remember the guy who's typing there, right? Or writing anything. You can see the picture. So what is important? When he encode, what is important? His communication skills, his attitude, knowledge, social system, or even culture, right? Then he will type the message, then through the channel, right? It will go, maybe it's your WhatsApp or maybe any messaging app. Then it goes to what, receivers. And again, it is very important that it should match the skills of the sender or attitude, its knowledge and social system and culture. That's how he will interpret the message, and that's the whole process of it. And then according to that, he'll give the feedback, like what he wants. He wants a pizza or he doesn't want, right? So that was all about SMCR. Let me tell you about the sham model of communication. Right. Imagine we're talking about how we share thoughts, ideas, and all the stuffs that bouncing in our heads, trying to make it understandable to someone else. That's essentially what Wilbur Schramm was getting at back in 1954. He thought it was super important not just to throw messages out there, but to really consider how they land with the folks we are trying to reach, right? It's like when you're trying to explain something to your friend and you can see their eyes glaze over, that's a miss, right? And Schramm was all about figuring out how to hit that target more often. So when we are chatting, advising, asking questions, or even giving directions, we are engaging in this dance of communication. It can happen in lots of ways: face to face, over text, through music, art, or you name it. And how we choose to communicate can really depend on who's we are talking with, right? Like you wouldn't explain TikTok to your grandma, right? In the same way that you'd explain it to your 13-year-old cousin, right? So the content, what we are saying, and the form, how we are saying it, have to work together to make sure our message gets where it's meant to go, whether that's to ourselves or another person or even out into the universe. Shams breaks down the rules of communication game into 3 levels. So remember, these levels are what? Syntactic, pragmatic, and semantic. We already talked about it. Let me tell you one by one. Right. So think of syntactic as the grammar kind of, of the communication world. It's all about how signs or symbols, words, gesture relate to each other. Suppose if I text you, wanna grab food? I'm asking about if you're up for getting something to eat, because the words follow a pattern you recognize. And suppose if I say grab food, wanna, would you get it? You will definitely, receive a wrong message. So that's very important that syntactic should be correct. Right. Then there is this pragmatic, which is about the relationship between the signs and us, the people using them, right? It's like when someone says, can you pass the salt at the dinner table? They are not just commenting on salt's location, right? They are politely asking you to hand it over. So this level is all about the context and how we understand unspoken rules of communication. So semantic next is where things get deep, right? It's about the connection between signs and what they actually represent. If I say dog, you don't just see the letter DOG, right? In your mind, you probably picture a furry, four-legged creature, right? So the word has meaning because we all agree on what it refers to in the real world. So that is about the sham model of communication. Remember, there are three levels. One is syntactic, then pragmatic, and at the end semantic. So you can understand we have the source, which actually encode the message and then send to the destination, where there will be decoder. Then he will interpret what the message has been saying. Then he will encode it and then send it back to through the feedback, and it will receive back to the sender. So that's how you'll communicate. So you'll understand through the picture what sham model of communication is. Now let me tell you about the interaction model of communication. So moving on to the interaction model of communication, this one's like a tennis match of talking and listening. It's not just about sending messages out into the void, but also about getting responses and adjusting, based on the feedback. You say something and what the other person reacts, then you respond to their response, and so on, right? So this back and forth happens within a specific settings, like the vibe of a room or the noise level at a party, and psychological context, like if you're stressed or happy, right? Which can totally change how the message is received, right? It's like when you're texting someone and they use a bunch of exclamation points, so you think they are excited, but in reality they were just in a rush. So the physical and psychological context can really shape the conversation, with everyone swapping roles between being the speaker and the listener. So that is simple. It's just interaction model of communication. You can understand through the image also, right? We have sender, we have receiver, where there is encoding and decoding, then there is feedback channel, and between whatever it is the noise, right? Now let me tell you about another important, which is Bernlund's transactional model of communication. So there is one picture that you can understand that it's all about cues, right? We have public cues, person cues, and private cues, and let me tell you all about it one by one, right? So this is a cool concept introduced back in 1970. Right? Imagine you're texting with your friend and both of you are throwing messages back and forth. That's pretty much the gist of what Bernlund was getting at, right? Instead of one person just dumping their thoughts on another, communication is more like ping pong matches, right? You send a message, get a response, and then it's your turn again, right? It's all about give and take. So in this model, it's key to remember that everyone involved is both a sender and a receiver at the same time, right? Think about when you're sharing a story with your buddy and they nod, laugh, or look confused. That's feedback, right? That feedback shapes how you continue the story. That's what this Berland meant by messages being reciprocal. You're not just talking to a brick wall, the reaction you get influence your next move, right? This isn't a one-way street where you send a message, get a reply, and that's that. No, communication is more like a dance, constantly evolving and shifting based on the feedback you receive. So it's a bit like playing a video game with someone. Your moves depend on their moves, creating a dynamic and ongoing interaction. Right. So Balan pointed out that communication involves layers and is built on feedback. Imagine you're at a party, the music, lighting, and vibe. Right. This is all your public cues and kind of set of certain mood, right? And your personal feelings about the party and your comfort level. That is your private cues, right? That influence how you interact. Then there is how you actually act or communicate at the party through words or a body language. That is your behavioral cues. So remember all these three cues, that very important. So when this in exam comes about the transactional model of communication, remember these three cues: public cues, private cues, and behavioral cues, and you will get the correct answer, right? For instance, if you're in a brightly lit cafe with a friend, that public cues like the cafe's ambience, right, might make you feel like more open and chatty, right? If you're feeling great because you just aced a test, that is your private cues. You're likely to share more positive stories, how you express yourself, maybe with excited gesture or a big smile. That is your behavioral cues. So this model also touches on the idea that how you say something can completely shape how it's received. Ever notice how a text can be interpreted in many ways depending on whether you use an emoji or not? That's the conduit idea, and the way you package your message affects how the person gets it. So this whole concept is like saying communication isn't just about tossing words back and forth. It's about creating a shared understanding, considering the environment, how we feel and how we act. It makes you think of communication as more than just talking or listening. It's about connecting on multiple levels, constantly adjusting based on feedback and really just trying to get on the same page with someone. Now let's talk about this helical model of communication, right? And it was actually introduced by Frank Dance back in 1967. That date is important. So it's all about seeing communication as something that grows and evolves over time, kind of like how we do from babies to adult, right? Think about a newborn baby, right? The very first thing they do to announce, hey, I'm here to the world, by what? By crying, right? So that's communication 101. It's simple but super important. As we grow, our ways of communicating become kind of more complex and layered. From babbling and first word to storytelling and debate, it's a journey that keeps growing. Next, we're going to talk about the constructionist model of communication, right? So this one is all about the vibes. Remember that. How you say something really matters. Imagine you're texting a friend about plans. Saying let's hang out with a bunch of exclamation marks gives of a totally different level than just a plain let's hang out, right? Or if you put an emoji, then again, it's kind of excitement that you're showing. So this model is like acknowledging that communication isn't just about strapping facts or information. It's about building and shaping our world together. Like when you share a meme and it sparks a whole conversation about your favorite show, you're not just talking, you're creating shared meaning and connection. It's like every chat, text or meme is a tiny brick building up the world of us, right? So guys, that's all about constructionist. Now let me tell you about the transmission communication model. It's very simple that you can understand. There is a sender and a receiver, and then there is a message channel, and between them there is noise, and sender encode and receiver decode the message, right? Very simple that you can understand. So this transmission communication model is pretty much the old school, straightforward way of looking at things. Think of it like sending a text. You type your message, hit send, and boom, right? It's off to your friend. This model views communication as a one-way street from sender to receiver, like shooting an arrow straight to the target. But life's not always that simple, right? Sometimes your text gets kind of misinterpreted, right? Like sometimes it's autocorrect, right? Sometimes you type something and autocorrect something else goes, right? Or it doesn't even deliver because you're in that one spot where your house has zero Wi-Fi, right? Or zero signal. So these glitches and misunderstandings, they are what the model calls what noise. So these are the stuff that messes with your message getting through clear and clean. So guys, that was all about models of communication. Now let me tell you about the characteristics of communication. So now think of communication as this never ending story. It keeps going, especially in places like work. Imagine your boss always on your case, giving you tasks and checking in to see how you're doing. That's them keeping the communication wheel spinning, making sure you're both on the same page about what needs to get done, right? And here's the thing, you can't have a conversation with yourself, right? Well, you can, but that's a different story, right? Communication is a two-way street, right? It needs at least two people to tangle with, right? One to send the message and another to catch it. Like when you shout a hello across the street and someone shouts hello back at you, right? Ever get that buzz of excitement when you're waiting for a friend to text back about plans for a weekend. That's anticipatory excitement, right? It's like when you're planning a serious party and you're all kind of, giddy thinking about how to spill the beans and get everyone as hyped as you are. So anticipatory excitement is there. Now communication as art and science, right? Communication isn't just about blabbering, right? It's both an art and a science. It's like painting a picture with your words while also figuring out the best way to get your message across without messing up, right? But let's be real, communication can be a kind of bit of a maze sometime, right? It's a complex process. It's more than just talking or writing. It's about how you put your thoughts into words, how the other person makes sense of those words, and all those kind of pesky things that can mess up the message, like loud noises or even our own biases. Then communication is like a dance that's always in motion. It's a way more than just the words we toss back and forth, right? Sometimes we mix up the terms communication, language, and speech, but they are not the same thing. Think of a speech as the actual sounds and words we make with our mouths, right? Like language, that's the big picture. It includes grammar, meaning, and the art of stringing words together, both the stuff we say out loud and the silent signal we send with our body language. So when we talk about communication, we're talking about all the important, like language, speech, and then some, right? And it's about sharing what's in our heads and hearts, really hearing the other person and crafting a response that keeps the ball rolling. Now let's talk about how we communicate. It doesn't always mean being in the same room, sharing the same air, right? Sure, chatting face to face is a direct communication, but there's also indirect communication, like sending text, emails, or even leaving notes for someone to find. Both styles have their own place, and it's cool how we can kind of stay connected in so many ways, right? And then there is the vibe of conversation, right? Some chats are super formal, like a job interview or a letter to a client, but most of the time we are in the realm of informal communication, texting a friend, maybe joking around at a lunch, or calling home to checking. Each style has its own rules. Then we have horizontal and vertical, right? So when we are at work or involved in a project, communication can go sideways, right? Horizontal with our peers, or up and down, right? Vertical with our bosses and their bosses. It's about knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them, which can make all the difference in getting things done smoothly, right? And communication is also universal, right? It's not just a human thing, it's everywhere. Animals, plants, right? Even machines communicate in their own ways. It's about sending and receiving messages, no matter who or what or where you are, right? And at the heart of it all is understanding each other, right? It's not just about the words being said, it's about the message being received as intended, right? Imagine telling a joke that lands just right, or explaining how you feel in a way that really gets through. That's the magic of spot, right? Where what you're trying to say is what they're really hearing, right? So let's put it into real life scenario. Ever had a misunderstanding over text because you couldn't hear the tone of a voice? That's a classic mix up in the dance of communication. Or think about a time when you and a friend were planning a trip, bouncing ideas back and forth and getting excited together. That's communication weaving its magic, connecting you both through shared dreams and plans. So remember, communication is this rich dynamic mix of talking and listening, or just ideas and feelings, in ways that are sometimes planned and sometimes just happen in flow of a life. Whether we are chatting with a friend, sending an email, or even giving a nod across the room, it's all about this incredible web of communication that makes up our world. So guys, that was all about communication, the model of communications, and then we also talked about characteristics, definition, and its meaning. Next, we're going to talk about one of the important topics in unit 4 communication is types of communication. And remember, one question is certain that you're gonna get it, so please be there, and I'll see you in our next session. So for now, have a good day. Bye bye.